Welcome to Wednesdays with Willa. I am your host, Willa White, and this is my weekly podcast show that airs at 10 a.m. on Wednesday mornings on my Facebook page, Willa White Medium. It also goes out on my YouTube channel, as well as blogtalkradio.com/Lilydale Radio. I'm part of the Lilydale Radio family, which is a symposium of shows that airs throughout the week, and I encourage you to check those all out. This is an opportunity on my podcast to have a spiritual conversation with you and my special guests. We're usually talking about spiritualism, mediumship, healing, faith, family, or more. And it's such a delight to have every week the various topics. So this is year 5 of Wednesdays with Willa. So I encourage you to look back at the archived videos of the show. Again, you can find those on my Facebook page, Willa White Medium, and also on my YouTube channel. And I wanted to make sure I tell everyone the Lilydale catalog is available for you to view online. That's the latest news from Lilydale. You can go to the lilydaleassembly.org website and you'll be able to find the events catalog there. You can start making your plans for this summer season of 2022. The season starts on June 24th and it's a 10-week summer season program of daily events, weekly events, workshops, and message services and more, and that'll end on September 4th. That's the final day of this summer season. So get your visit to Lilydale in and make your plans now to book your readings, book your accommodations, or just spend the day here. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my special guest today. We have with us today Sharon Hill. Thanks for being here today, Sharon.
Thank you, Will. It's always such a pleasure and a privilege to be on your show. I just love it.
Thanks so much. Those of you who may recognize Sharon, she is a registered Lilydale medium, and she is also a Lilydale radio show host. And her show is on Mondays at 12 p.m. noon Eastern time. So if you want to tune in on Facebook and also Blog Talk Radio, you can enjoy her show that she offers and further educates people in her own way. We all bring a different flavor to the scene, as it were. And Sharon is, as I said, a registered Lilydale medium. However, she won't be here in person and available for readings in Lilydale this particular summer season. You can reach out to her and of course schedule distance readings, phone or Zoom. And you can find more about Sharon on her website at sharonhill.com. So
Rev Sharon Hill.
Reverend Sharon Hill. So REV Sharon Hill.
Right. Thank you. Yes.
And I know we're going to be enjoying the conversation. It's one of those things with grief. There can be all kinds of ways that we experience grief. And so this will be a conversation about the faces of grief. And to start us off, I thought I would share a poem that I found that is titled The Many Faces of Grief, just to kind of set that tone and show you the various ways that people experience this. As mediums, we get to be in that with our clients and see what that's like. Sometimes when we're outside and looking in at someone's grief, we may judge how they're experiencing things or versus how when we experience it. But so just keep that in mind as I read this special poem to you now. The Many Faces of Grief by A. Van der Velden. Robert still cannot sleep too well. He's awake from 2 a.m. Janet is the opposite and doesn't rise till 10. Sarah made a special card for each and every one. She did this sitting on the beach while soaking up the sun. Samuel went out to the shed in the middle of the night. He grabbed the axe and chopped the wood until it was first light. George took out his little boat and sailed across the bay. We may be family, we may be friends, but we each grieve in our own way. Peter flew off the handle. Anything set him off. Pat put a message in a balloon and gently set it aloft. Tui simply went to bed and hid under the sheets. She couldn't bear to leave the house. It's now been several weeks. Jane cleaned the entire house. From room to room she went, till the house was cleaner than it had ever been, and all her tears were spent. Leo couldn't wash it all. He didn't shower for days. We may be friends or family, but we grieve in different ways. Mark just had to go to work to take his mind off things. Melissa walked to the park at dusk and sat quietly on the swings. Bethany went down to the gym. She didn't do this for fun. And if that didn't help ease her pain, she'd head out for a run. Patricia looks like nothing's wrong. Not a tear was shed. Plenty has been, but no one knows. She only cries in bed. So please be kind and gentle when loved ones pass away, for each of us will be grieving in our own and special way. Whew. And we see that all, don't we, Sharon, as mediums?
We do. And boy, I was thinking about my own family and through certain losses we've had. And boy, that is so true. And as you said, as a medium, we're no experts in grief, but we are in the trenches with the people while they're there. And I firmly believe it is our ability to be there because we've been there. And this is how we hold the hands of those who are walking through it without judging, knowing that it is a process that's different for everyone. And the timing is different. The behaviors are different. And it always amazes me as a medium, I'll get the husband they've lost coming through, showing me the wife grabbing for the refrigerator door to open it, and him saying to her, I'm still right here. You won't find what you need in there, as she puts on 20 pounds, right? But the healing that's needed is that connection. And I know, Willa, from my own experience, when I lost my brother through suicide, and, when the death is expected, the grief is still there and it behaves with all the faces. And yet it's different than when they're unexpected. The accidents, the murders, the suicides, it's the shock and the unexpectedness that goes with it. It seems to kind of compound or impound more. And I watched this, and in my own experience through that, when there aren't any answers, it was a medium who was she was a healer. And I went to my healer, my very first energy teacher. And she worked with spirit, and I knew this. And I went to her for healing. And she said to me, I have your brother here, and he's bringing a blackberry pie. Now, first of all, this was our first encounter. She didn't know me. She didn't know I had a brother, dead or alive. She didn't know the circumstances. She didn't know anything. And the blackberry pie is how I knew it actually was my brother. This is like the blackberry pie mediumship, and in that moment, it was the healing I needed. And I knew he was okay. And I was okay. And I realized in that moment that when that is the healing that's needed, there's no other modality that will bring it. It's, as a matter of fact, why I'm a medium today. Because when that's the healing that's needed, nothing else brings it. And I've seen client after client after client. This is the healing that's needed.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you have as well.
Yeah. And it's something that maybe they can't necessarily feel spirit themselves, or they feel that distancing with them, or maybe they just want confirmation that what they are experiencing with their loved one is real. I'm not making it up, the wishful thinking, all of those kind of things. But that's what's so special about mediumship. It's a sacred gift. And it's something that is a beautiful thing to know that we're able to blend those two worlds, that love never dies. And we can give that gift of a measure of peace and comfort and easing of grief. And it all comes down, like you said, to working through different stages of grief. You might have different faces as you go through them. And as you expressed with your brother's passing, that shock, that first stage is shock. It's this denial of, how can this be? Why does this need to be? This you can feel it reverberate through you in
Yes.
those moments of, no, I don't want this. It's like you want to almost like declare a mulligan, like you're playing mini golf. I get to take that shot again, don't I?
Exactly. It reminds me of the phrase, I don't actually know where it came from, so I have to say that. But it goes, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And it's interesting that grief is defined as emotional anguish, or mental anguish and intense emotional suffering. And really, I think as mediums, what we do, we can't stop the pain. The waves will come. We can teach people how to jump them, okay? But the suffering is optional. When we have the comfort of knowing our loved one is there and knowing our loved one is okay, there's something profoundly healing for both dimensions, here and there. And it's just, as you said, sacred and priceless.
Yeah.
And many people need that. It's interesting, I have in my own family, by the way, my sister is the cleaner.
Oh.
She's going through loss, I'll invite her over, she'll clean your whole house. And okay, that's so the faces, but we have a minister in our family, a more traditional minister. And it was interesting because he was young right out of school. He, went through ministerial school in a regular college and a well-known denomination of religion. And, he was doing funerals, and he was doing a part at a family funeral. He and I shared the ministerial duties. And, you could tell that he had never been touched by grief, really. And the way he went about things, he just couldn't make that connection. Although, bless his heart, I have a lot of respect for him. You could tell he'd just never been touched. And then he lost his dad suddenly and unexpectedly when he was still young. When his dad was still young, and it actually sent him into such a tailspin. He lost his faith. He took a sabbatical. And I think this is not uncommon. Grief, like nothing else, when we have lost the most important thing in our life, it opens us and we lose everything we think we knew. And as painful as that is, I have to say, on the other side of it, it is probably one of the greatest gifts we could receive, because it opens us in ways that we never would have opened, and makes us present and available to people in ways we never could have been.
Mhm.
And he is he's a much better minister now, I have to say. And he did get through it without mediumship, by the way. There are people who don't believe that's a valid method, and that's okay. But there is another side when we get there.
Mhm.
I recall, and you see the number of people who come and the situations. I had a woman who came for a reading. She lost her son. And oh my gosh, it still breaks my heart today to recall this, because she was in so much pain.
Mhm.
And she just wanted to connect with him. And other family members, as you said, they were experiencing signs from him. They were getting signs that they recognized and sharing that. And it made the grief even worse, because now she has the judgment, what's wrong with me? I'm not getting signs. Everyone else is getting signs. And oh, it was just horrific. And Spirit said to her, your grief is too deep. Okay. And it was, I think, Ed Sheeran. He's a musical artist, and he has a line in a song. The song is Supermarket Flowers. It's actually a song about a boy, a young man losing his mom. Okay. But I invite everyone to listen to it. It is just wonderful. And he says a heart that's been broke is a heart that's been loved.
Mm.
And the extent of the love is the extent of the grief, you know, as deep as it is. And on the other side would be the extent of the joy. But she was in pain, doubly so. And my guide said, have her come back in 3 months. Now, okay, they seem to know the timeline when we do not.
Mm-hmm.
And she was just, her energy was too low to recognize or receive any of the signs. It's just where she was. There was no judgment. She was just that broken from it. And it's okay. She needed time to heal. And she came back in 3 months and was able to make a beautiful connection with her son, who had always been there, of course.
Right.
And things have been much different ever since. And now she pretty much sees him on his birthday. Okay, so
Right.
right, we have these people come on anniversaries, birthdays, and it's just tickles my heart then, right? See how we acknowledge and celebrate then after the fact,
Sure.
right? But that one really sticks with me, and my heart just went out to her so much.
Yeah.
And I have to say, you're just in too much depression right now.
Yeah, it's like there's a rawness that happens, and I have to say that in terms of scheduling of readings, like a time frame for that, some people will ask, well, how soon after someone's passing can I schedule a reading? And I tell them that 6 months is usually a good time to wait, depending. I mean, spirit sometimes can come through, boom, right away. Like somebody will have a session scheduled, and it was like a day or two before someone passed. They didn't even know when they scheduled, because it's months before, and that person can come through. But it also does matter for the client in terms of where they are in their stages of grief and what they're experiencing, because there can be such rawness there that they alternate between being so like numb and wanting to shut down, or being angry, which is like that second stage of that pain, the guilt maybe, or anger that's all kind of in there. Why, and still maybe trying to move into bargaining and all of that sort of thing. And then it can move into the depression and that loneliness. And when they're in that depressed state, have you noticed this as well, Sharon, that when a client is in that space, or even ourselves, right, as a person, that it's difficult for us to feel love or feel good communication with other people. It's almost like someone could be literally knocking on the door or ringing the doorbell, and you just can't hear it. You're in your own space of and it's you miss things because you're in that space. And it's easier when you're in a joyful, centered place to relate with people here on the earth plane, and relate with people in spirit. And it just seems to be how that energetically happens. Would you agree with that, Sharon?
I would. And sometimes you hear the doorbell and you just don't care.
Right. That's true too. Yeah.
And I had a reading just this last week, and there's another kind of very. I felt so tough. I felt for this woman, and every single area of her life was in a state of loss, all at the same time. And I'm like, oh my God, right? Every area. And she like, what do I do? And spirit wasn't giving any insight to what to do. And I'm like seeing the boxes packed all around her. And her, the message was for her to have faith. But they also said, and this is interesting, I was given, none of us as humans are quite talented enough to screw up every area of our life at once. It's just a fact.
Most
So
people are not. You're right.
this is very good news when absolutely everything is in a state of loss all at once. And I mean, grief happens when we lose jobs, when we lose our place to live, when we lose our friends, our relationship, you know, in every area. And they're like, this is wonderful news. It's proof God's working in your life. And what was happening is she was in the middle of a spiritual shift. She was going to a whole different paradigm. And in fact, it was tremendous news that she couldn't feel at the time. Right. But that's the beauty of this, Willa, how privileged I was to be the one to offer her that message and to show her that. So she had that to hold on to. Okay. Because don't worry, you're going somewhere and it's good. Okay. Hard, I can't see it. That's what faith is. Believing in something unseen.
Yes.
Trust and just do what's right in front of you, and you'll be amazed what happens.
Yes. Through the storms of life. And it is not just about the death of a person that you care about and love. It can be the death of an identity or a death of a situation in your life or a phase of yourself. It can be into those ways of it. And we go into a reflection mode of saying, okay, what is it that I need to move through to get to that upward mobility space of energy? As there can be sometimes this reconstruction that goes on in the life, and the acceptance of that, and moving toward those acceptance spaces. And yeah, I think that's what, as mediums, sometimes when we're bringing through spirit, the loved ones are saying, this is what you're in that space to do that now, and to go into that true living space. Because sometimes one of the hardest things about having to accept grief is that you're going to not necessarily live the life that you imagined.
Correct.
That it's not the life that you thought it was going to be, but you have to keep in mind that was not the only life worth living.
Right. But you make a very good point. The loss of the dream is always more painful than the loss of the real thing. It seems, because that's what we attach our hope to. You know, that hope that keeps us going. And that's what seems to be lost.
Yeah.
And
the woulda, coulda, shoulda of all of it. Yeah.
Right. And then there isn't anything there. It has to be recreated. But this is the rising phoenix. From the ashes rise again. But first, just let it bottom out. And then I liken it to hitting a golf ball, right? If you want the ball to go up, you must hit down. In order for us to rise spiritually, we can't lift ourselves there. You can, but you're ungrounded and it's not safe and you won't really get anywhere. But if you settle down in your meditation chair, the further down you go, the higher your energy rises. Isn't that amazing?
That's an interesting thought. Yeah.
Let it bottom out and then let it rise, but it will rise.
It's the idea of a car that the tires are stuck in mud. You don't want to just keep spinning tires to try to get out. Sometimes you have to like take a little moment, get some other things lined up so that you know when the right moment to gun the engine is.
You know, one of the ones I absolutely love, it's not uncommon, and you know, I'm not trying to skew things along gender lines, but I'm going to use another example of a husband who passed and the wife was left, and she was in the anger phase, and he's showing me her and everything she's doing and acting out, and of course I'm laughing, right? And he's laughing, okay? He's laughing because this is not her nature, right? And so I'm sharing, he's laughing and he's showing you doing all these. And when you say out loud what she's actually doing and it's accurate, she just started laughing because it was true and she was so busted, right? Right. That then came the freedom. Now she's laughing when she gets to the anger. Oh, okay. And she still may do that, but she'll do it with awareness, which is very different.
True.
And the laughter can be so healing.
Yeah, because it's probably one of the things she missed most about that is sharing a laugh with him, chuckling with him. And now she understands that when she's doing this stuff, he's laughing at her, trying to get her into a different mode and mood.
Exactly.
And our spirit loved ones do that. And sometimes I'll say to them, do I really have to say that to this client? Like, are you sure? Like, I'm going to get in trouble. And they're like, say it. So I say it. And I'm like, and they're like, yes, that's so true. And this person in spirit is the only person that probably could have said that to them.
Exactly.
Out of whatever they were in.
Right. You talk about this work being sacred again. It truly is, right?
It's a sacred joy. There's a, as much as we are dealing with death, there is that sense of, there's an underlying joy that when we tap into that, it is like this profound fountain of love that just starts to flow in the session, and it's palpable.
It is. And the safety that we bring to people, I'm sure you and every other medium has a box of tissues there right on the table. And people say, oh, I won't need that. And they probably use half the box. Yeah. Okay. Because it's so common, to get into that healing place. It just happens. Mm-hmm. Healing just happens when people feel safe and they can feel they're in the presence. Yes. And that's what we can bring. And then they're in a place where they can receive that healing. And we as mediums being entrusted with that unearned intimacy, mm-hmm. Being their loved ones as we bring them through. Yes. And those words that we can't imagine we'd ever say. Mm-hmm. That's coming through to bring that healing. And yes. It's just, it goes beyond any words. But healing happens, and people often, they leave, and I'm sure you see this, much lighter, more uplifted, mm-hmm. like in ways that they couldn't imagine was even possible. Sure. Yes. And you're right. Some people, they cry. Some people don't cry. They actually laugh. Some people are in that state of, oh my gosh, is this really happening? They have to take a little time. And with some folks, they need a little time after that session to just kind of go, maybe take a walk or sit on a bench and just decompress after that, because they were just like, what just happened? They need to process that. And it won't be about like going and talking to someone who's maybe traveled there, here with them or anything like that. It's just being with themselves and the spirit for a little bit. There's an adjustment sometimes for some folks, and it's part of their process. Another thing I thought it would be good to mention is, yes, there are those 5 stages of grief that we've kind of gone through here, but there's actually a 6th stage of grief. Did you know about this, Sharon? I did not know about that. I know about the 5 stages. The 5 stages. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is the one who really got that out there about the 5 stages. Well, now she's kind of co-wrote, so to speak, with another author named David Kessler, and it's the 6th stage of grief. And the 6th stage is meaning. Meaning, MEANING. So yes. That's the next stage, which is moving forward in a way that honors my loved ones. Right. That's a big key thing in terms of mediumship. Once a person kind of gets to that stage of, okay, I need, as much as I want to honor my loved one's life, and they sometimes think that they shouldn't be living, or they feel guilty for living somehow, or laughing or having fun would be disrespectful somehow, or make it feel like they don't love them or miss them. But when they start to realize that when they honor their own life and have joy in their own life, they're actually honoring the loved one's life, that had value. A life has value when you live it. It's interesting you say that, because often the spirits will say that when they come through. Yeah. That what they want is for you to be happy,
Yes.
joyful, and live your life.
Right.
And they'll just say it straight up. They don't want you to be depressed. They don't want you to be sad. They don't want you, in all these places, because
Yeah.
it doesn't serve anyone.
They don't need people to be so on the floor that they can barely move. That's not what they want for their loved ones. If I were to pass today, I would not want my family, my friends, to be so prostrate in grief that they couldn't function in their own. I'd be cheering them on from the sides. Go, do. I'm so proud you did this. I know that was tough, but you're going to get through it. That's what you do too, Sharon, right?
I would, and literally that is what spirit does.
Yeah.
We get that coming through all that. They're cheering you on. Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll look for another mate for you. Don't worry about it. Right. You get this. Right. I want you to be happy.
Well,
right.
like they don't mind being missed. A lot of them like being missed, but they just don't want to be someone's excuse for not moving forward.
Right.
And I think that's what's so interesting with grief. With that poem earlier, everybody grieves very differently. And some people, like even in families, you can see this happen. Some families, they go and they just go into their own little separate corners and they go cry in their own little corners, and that's how they do things. And another family or another group, it might be that they gather together and they say, I love you. And they just like really enjoy it all the more being with a person and kind of looking past irritations and other issues that might have been there because the relationship is more important. So there are all kinds of different ways that people learn about themselves. And it's reminding me of something you said a little earlier on about how sometimes people go through a life revolution during with a passing. It's as if it starts to ignite their soul, and that is the moment, like with your brother, that he recognized there's more to this.
Yes.
There's more. It ignites the soul, and sometimes it's through that pain, through the learning of and moving through the suffering, that we get to this other side of, but now we've had the bitter, we have the sweet.
Yes.
So beautiful.
It is.
My goodness. In all of this, as mediums, not everybody who comes to us is going to be in deep grief. Some people, they're just like, I want to talk to my people in spirit because I know you're good at it, and we're going to have a great conversation today. And they want to have that. There's evidence there, but they just want to have a conversation. They don't necessarily need help or any kind of level of counseling through it. But for others, it is, I have a lot I want to talk about with this person.
Unsolved, unfinished business, things when people pass and things, there was no closure. And this is one of the things that, again, that a medium can bring insight and help too. But that happens quite often. There's no closure, and people procrastinate, and oftentimes if the death is unexpected, things weren't put in place, and there can be a lot unfinished business. And just to be able to, first of all, say, that's all right. Okay, how can I finish this now that they're dead? I can't talk to them anymore. Well, guess what? Yes, you can. And there's a way to bring closure. As you mentioned, some people do ceremony, right? And there's all kinds of ways and different ceremonies to release different things. So we do what we can. We get insight where we can. We get the help from the loved one themselves when it's possible. There are ways that we can move through this, but we always, I think the one true gift is to know that we're really not alone going through this.
Right.
Because there's that sense. And for families that people sometimes grieve alone. As you mentioned, sometimes they come together. I've often noticed a pattern where people will come together at first, and then they don't maintain it and they go their separate ways. And that in itself causes different things, or makes it more difficult or just different. And for people to know that all these differences and the different places and the different faces, you may be all of them at any given time, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So for people just to know that it's okay, where you are is okay. And then what do you need? And to really look at that.
And some people need to go through grief counseling, and it's, you know,
Right.
absolutely something that is important to recognize when you're at that point and you need a deeper level of help so you can get through the everyday, you know,
Yeah.
to get through the everyday. And sometimes that's group and sometimes that's, you know, individual. Sometimes that's family, however that needs to evolve for you. And for some people, having a life coach can be what helps them get their life back in order. Those are all resources as well. And yeah, I do have many clients that said, yeah, my psychiatrist recommended you to me,
Oh, wow.
me to
Yeah.
you. And they, you know, they'll say this was better than all those hours of
Yeah.
counseling that they had. And everybody's going to have their own individual experience. There's no guarantee of how that's all going to unfold. But it's fascinating to me that just by having that conversation, it can bring them some peace. Now, Sharon, let's talk to them about the idea that sometimes a reading could raise more questions too.
Oh, absolutely. Woo, uh, it can. Uh, Talk about, sometimes it can bring up losses they didn't know they had. Woo, okay. Sometimes it can bring up people in the family they didn't know were related. Woo. And again, you have to trust that anything that's being brought, it's the right time. So we're not in control of that. But you're right. Oftentimes it can bring up more questions.
Mhm.
Many times. And then set them in a different direction, looking on different paths.
Yes.
So that is quite interesting. And then, I recall one, and it's kind of delicate, but it did bring up some questions, and they looked into it, got some answers, and decided this isn't worth making public
Pursuing.
in the family because it will have absolutely no effect other than to potentially cause harm.
Right.
Okay. So, but to know things truthfully, there's a great freedom in that. When they say the truth will set us free, I believe that it actually does. I've seen it so many times. And just knowing that brings peace. If I know the truth, yeah.
The truth, I think, is also time sensitive. I don't know how else to say that
Yes.
to you,
Yes.
but you can't. I will say this to sometimes you can't give a first grader ninth grade material.
Correct.
It has to be at those right times, and otherwise there's a developmental gap that's so strong on an energetic level, but also on many other levels within the person. And so you have to be cognizant of those many layers, not just as it relates to grief, but also the development of a person and what it means to be a person here in the living and having to deal with a life. And so we mentioned that only not to create this little titter within people, but that acknowledgement that it can happen that way, that and it's not always about skeletons in the closet. Sometimes it starts a person on that path of discovery within themselves, a discovery of there is something more, and maybe I can move into acceptance or maybe forgiveness. So it might put them on the path that I've had people come back a year or so later and say, it changed my life to have a reading.
Yes.
And things I didn't recognize about myself that
Right.
so and so from spirit was talking about, and then all of a sudden it's like they get it and they're like, I am now in this more self-aware mode, And I'm bringing that to the relationships I have here with others and on the earth plane. It's changed how I do the business of my life.
Exactly. It's the reason I became a spiritualist. When that opened in me, when I knew that my brother was okay and I was okay, it opened the door for me that began asking, well, why does no quote unquote church or religion have answers for this? When obviously there are answers.
There are answers.
It it's the reason I became a spiritualist.
Yeah.
I believed through my own experience that there is something far greater, and that the way sometimes the world views things and our culture views things might be the obstacle. And it freed me from that
Right.
and opened those doorways for me to look and seek and find.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And it does that. And then the more you find, the more you're led, the more you, right? The doors keep
Right.
opening.
You get to the
So,
next level. You're peeling back all these layers within yourself,
right,
and sometimes there is a regression in thought because you kind of got used to a comfort level. You almost want to go back to it, even if it's negative or positive or whatever. And then you're ready to go. I need to stretch. I need to
right,
go this. And so there's a timing that is very, very personal for each individual person on their journey through grief, through life. And that is also the case in spirit. So when we connect with people in spirit, Sharon, they don't know everything, correct?
correct, correct.
So they're on their own level of understanding that they're reaching their whatever state of awareness they had when you're here on the earth plane. They take that with them when they pass, and they're learning and they're growing, and spiritual progression is eternal and infinite, and it takes however long it needs to, which is actually a good thing that we've got leeway.
Yes.
In that way, I would say.
And I love that the fact that the interaction between the worlds heals both worlds.
Yes.
We get to keep growing together. And it's very important that we do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we pray for the soul, that soul can evolve. Okay. We're sending that energy for their goodness. And as we do, it comes back. This is natural and spiritual law, right? So, it's like give a healing, get a healing. You're getting one as you're giving, right? So there's that powerful dynamic where healing can occur between the worlds so that both worlds continue to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
And you said it very well. And I've experienced this so true in my practice and in my life too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's exciting to know that we have this greater meaning that we can attach to our lives and really see it with those eyes. It helps to know what we know. We don't just believe it. It helps to know on a deep level what we do. It doesn't mean that when we have people who in our own lives that pass that we don't cry. It doesn't mean that we don't have grief and on our own in our own processes of this, but there's a different kind of sensation, I think, because we're in that mode of we have the reminder. It's like a divine reminder that we're each souls, that we're sparks of the divine, and as such we have unlimited potential for love and peace and joy, and that is what we have to remind ourselves about, and that's one of the gifts of spiritualism and of sacred mediumship that we do. And I know we need to wrap things up. Is there anything else you wanted to share with folks today?
I think we've covered an awful lot.
Yeah.
And I just keep thinking about celebration of life. Really, that's what it's about. For those of us who are living, I tell people often wake up and have a near life experience. Right? Because we get stuck in the fear and the unknown, right? The not knowing. And just go have a near life experience, be done with it, right?
Yeah. Instead of the near death experience, the near life experience.
Exactly. Yeah. And that, you make such a good point that it's all in our own timeline. It reminds me of planting a garden of seeds.
Mm.
You can plant bulbs, you can plant seeds, But every vegetable and every fruit and every flower will come up in their own time, not in ours. And it's all okay.
It's hard to let it be okay because you're just like, I can't, it doesn't feel okay, and it's hard to let it be okay. But it's one of those things where you just maybe have a moment of pause within yourself that you're like, I kind of felt like I was okay for a moment there. Oh, well, maybe I shouldn't feel okay. Like you have to like work through those things, and then you start to realize, I can feel okay. It's all right that I feel okay, and it's like things start to chug, 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 chug,
Right.
chug, chug,
When you
chug,
feel
chug,
sad
chug.
in the moment, you recognize it.
Yeah.
Like even now, my mom's been gone a while, and I'll go to pick up the phone to call her, and I'll go, whoa. And then I'll go, okay, miss you, Mom. And then let it go.
Yeah.
I feel sad, yes, and I'm shocked that I still have this response after all this time. And I'm able to recognize the love. It's always about the love.
Yes.
That's what it is. And, I had an interesting experience. My mom got married again for the second time later in life. He wasn't really my stepdad, but I kind of adopted him. Okay, anyway, I wasn't too keen on opening my heart to anybody, and not in this arena anyway. And his brother passed, and I went to the funeral out of respect for him and the family to support him and my mom. And I'm sitting there, I didn't know his brother at all. And all of a sudden I'm crying and I'm like, whoo. And I had to check in with myself and I'm like, what's going on? Why are you crying? You don't even know this man. And I realized it's because one day it's going to be the man that married my mother and I actually love him. And I realized in that moment, I recognized the love.
Yeah.
Grief will allow us to recognize the love.
Yes. Yes. That and those mortality issues get put right into our face.
Thank you.
With all of that, because and you're right. When someone passes, it's almost a reminder of oh, someone else I know could pass. These are normal thoughts, completely normal thoughts. And I was thinking about when you all of a sudden you wanted to call your mom. I actually feel like she must have been there with you, and that was just your like, oh, I need to talk to her, and
Yes, right, yes.
she's right there. And I think we think in terms of that, but it's almost like sometimes you don't necessarily see them right next to you or feel them right next to you, but there's this sharing of the thoughts, kind of like a text messaging.
Yes.
That goes on with spirit. Only you're your own little Wi-Fi device. They're their own little Wi-Fi device, however you want to look at that. And it also reminds me, I'd written down this quote from Rumi that I thought, if it feels right.
Oh, I love Rumi. I love Rumi.
I'll share this because it seems so perfect in this moment. And then we'll close out our beautiful conversation about the faces of grief. Your body is away from me, but there is a window open from my heart to yours. From this window, like the moon, I keep sending news secretly.
Yes. Wonderful.
And that's what happens. That's your own mediumship that is occurring in those moments. It's not just wishful thinking. It's that knowing that you're on etheric levels connecting, and that when you're on the vibrational frequency of that, and you've got it. It's the radio station is on, and beautiful love can be shared in those moments. It's that love that's always permeating what we do as mediums and as souls. So beautiful.
Make a good point. People are communing with their loved ones. They often just don't know it.
That's right. And it's about kind of opening up that window of your soul a bit to let the breezes, like, right, it's been such a beautiful day today. I've been opening up the doors and the windows and letting that in, and sometimes we just have to let that flow of spirit in, so that we can really be truly aware in those moments. Oh, so beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Sharon. I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts and your understandings of connection with spirit. It's always very special to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure, Willa.
So stay tuned for next week on Wednesdays with Willa. Same time, same channel here, Facebook page, Willa White Medium at 10 a.m. Eastern on Wednesdays. And you can find, again, Sharon on RevSharonHill.com. All right, everyone, have a beautiful week. Many blessings to you. Bye-bye.